alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to A Live After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is Richard H. Stevens, a new guest to the show. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, well, it's great to have you. And tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. Jeez. I'm not talking to two of you.
I'm an epic fantasy author from Canada. I've published my first book I guess at the end of 2017, I published 2 novellas just so I could learn the ropes of the Amazon and cut my teeth. I didn't really care if people read those 2 novellas, but it was all setting up for the first book I released in August of 2018 called Soulforge. And Soulforge is a book I had in my head for about 35 years, and it took me that long to actually write that book. And we finally published it in August 2018, and I've written 13 books since then, and I'm about 75,000 words into book 14. So it's I'm doing this full time, and it's certainly a joy.
Well, congratulations for that. That's a lot of books too in 4 years. That's not bad, especially because we're talking pretty big books, epic fantasy.
Yeah, most of my books they come in between 350 to 400 words, but
ooh, holy cow!
Pages, I mean, the words.
Pages, okay, so like 100,000 words for listeners.
So about 110,000 words,
yeah,
for sure.
Like okay, fair enough.
The books I'm writing now, though, the series The Highcliffe Guardians, which is a series I'm into now, they're coming in at 150,000 words each, so they're 600 pages long. So they're taking me a little bit longer. I can write probably 2 of those books a year.
Okay. Hey, that's still not bad, but yeah, that's especially for giant volumes like that. I mean, that's because that's like 500 or 600 pages. That's a nice girthy book there.
Yeah, and it's more epic fantasy. Like my other books, like I say, they're 350 to 400 pages, decent length for fantasy, but they're not like Brandon Sanderson type fantasy books.
Yeah.
So, and I truly believe that the story will tell itself in the amount of pages it takes. Mine generally take 400, but for some reason this series is taking 600 pages. The first 2 books come in at 600 pages.
Yeah, I know how that goes. My books vary so much in page count nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like it used to be I would write all my books were like 70 to 100,000 words long, mostly 100,000. And now they just keep getting shorter. It feels like. I mean, I don't know. I like writing a little more brief, I guess.
Yeah, well, being self-published, one of the things I was trying to take advantage of too is that with Amazon, I had them on KU, Kindle Unlimited, and I was dabbling with playing with the idea that if I wrote the book shorter, I can get more books out there, then there's more books for people to buy. But so a couple of my books in the Legends of Lurker series, my first Dragon series, the first one came in at about 350 pages, and I figured, okay, if I start writing 350-page books, then I can get more out. And hopefully at the end of the day, it's a net sales more. But book 2 came into 400 pages. Book 3 a little bit shy of that, and the stories write themselves. And I'm a true believer that I try not to get too hung up on hitting 100,000 words or hitting 150,000 words.
Yeah.
My only fear is one of my stories in the series will all of a sudden just be like 30,000 words and the story's done. Yeah.
That might be a little too tricky to get to sell the readers then, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, though to be honest, a 30,000 word book, that's like 100 pages. That's a cool length of a book if the series is that length. If it fits in. It's still not. It can be nice if you're selling it at the right price too. Obviously.
Yeah, it's kind of like a reader magnet too. Like you can use my next series, if I get to England, like I tried to do in 2020 before COVID hit, I plan to write a reader magnet, so it'll be maybe 100, 200 pages long, and then my plan is to maybe give that one away, in hopes to snag the readers, and they like that story, they'll buy books 2, 3, 4, and 5.
That's a good idea, I mean, and a nice hefty reader magnet, really, at 30,000 to 40,000 words. I mean, that's almost a novel, a minimum size novel by some standards.
Yeah, for sure, make it worth the reader's while, and hopefully they get
exactly.
invested and they want to hear the story.
But you seem like you write fast enough that wouldn't be really a problem necessarily to do. I mean, that'd be worthwhile.
Yeah, and it's funny. People always say that to me, and I don't think I write fast at all. I kick myself. Like if I'm lucky, I get 2,000 words a day, but I do it every day. So this is my full-time job now, so I look forward to Mondays. I get up in the morning and I edit what I wrote the day before, and then I write in the afternoon, and I get 2,000 words is an average day. 4,000 words would be a great day, and there's some days that I just not feeling it and I don't write anything.
Yeah, lately with all the serials I've been publishing on Kindle Vella, I mean, I just recently changed my schedule to be 4 chapters published a day on weekdays, and that is tough because a lot of these books I'm writing from scratch as I publish them. So I've gone a little bit insane.
4 chapters a day. Wow.
It's been my first. This is the today. Lifting the veil on the show for listeners. This is Friday. I record on Friday nights, and man, I almost made all 20 chapters this week. It was really difficult.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is good. Yeah, no, I'd be happy with that.
And I guess I'm a day behind. I made 16 chapters up at this point. I'll get those remaining chapters down before the show drops, but that's tough. I mean, I most of them are pretty short though. These are like, to be fair, these are serial chapters for me. That's like 600 to 1,200 words. So they're pretty short,
yep.
But I have to do 4 every day.
My chapters are short too, yeah. No, my chapter, I try to do a chapter a day if I can, because I get an idea for a chapter, and each chapter is like a little story, and you get all excited about it, and you write that chapter. My chapters are generally between 4 to 8 pages, so that would be about 1,000 to 4,000 words. I generally never go over 10 pages, but that's not a plan. Again, the chapter I just finished, I think, went over that, but most of my chapters are normally 4 to 5 pages. That's just the way they are.
Hey, that's a good length. But most of my like novels are the chapters are like around 2,000 words, 2 or 3,000, and that's. But anyway, the word count is surely going to make somebody's eyes glaze over, so we can move past that.
yeah, no doubt, yeah.
It's interesting to writers, but other people are going to find, like, what are you nerds talking about? Just all these numbers. And only some writers are even interested in it, to be honest. I know a lot of people are like a lot of people I see on Twitter are like, yeah, they don't really count their words, I mean, I don't keep a big spreadsheet or anything, but I do notice how long the scenes I'm writing are.
I don't. I was on a Facebook group a couple of years ago, and they have a section devoted to how many words you write per day, and it is kind of neat. It almost makes you want to write those, makes you want to write even when you're not feeling it. Mm-hmm. But after a while, that can be a slog too. Like, I enjoy writing, but I don't enjoy writing if I'm forced to write. I enjoy writing when I'm in the mood to write, and that's normally all the time. But there are days that I can say that I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah,
and that's, I think that ties into writer's block. A lot of people talk about writer's block, and I am not a believer of writer's block at all. I don't think it's a thing. I don't think it's true. I think that you're just not ready to write that day, so don't. And I think what happens is people stress over that, and it makes it worse. And now they're stressing that, oh no, I didn't write today, and I didn't write yesterday, and now you're starting to block out your creative juices and your creative process. So I think that's where the block might come in. But for me, I know if I'm not feeling it today, I just won't write it, and there's probably a good reason for it, because I'll have a shower the next day, and all of a sudden these great ideas come in my head, and I'll start writing again away I go. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, often if the idea just isn't fully baked for the next scene or chapter or whatever, that happens to me all the time. I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons it's so tough. Obviously, because I'm writing 10 different stories each week. Actually, 11 because I'm also writing a novel. But these 10 serials, I'm cycling through them several each day.
I bet. Yeah.
And it is maddening, but it's also kind of exciting. So I really enjoy it. Because I'm writing a little shorter chapters, but they're not. But I'm bouncing around, and I don't know. I have ADHD, so that it works for me. But it's tough.
I just write the one story, but I can see the benefit of writing multiple stories at once, because if you're not feeling it for one story, you might be feeling it for another. And I think maybe that's a good way to get the words going as well.
Exactly. And I mean, like you said, you think of the moment. There's, you start playing through scenes in your head and stuff. You envision these moments. You get the ideas together, and then it just flows when you get to the page. That's how it works for me. I just never know which one it's going to be until I do it.
I think that the toughest part is writing the connecting scene, because you got this awesome scene in your head and you're writing this awesome scene, but you know that something has to happen to bridge the gap between those two awesome scenes, and you're just not feeling how to actually bridge that gap, because you don't want it to be boring for the reader. but you still have to connect the two. Like you can't just jump from one fight scene to another fight scene. There has
well,
to be
that's not even. Yeah. There's lots of reasons you
Yeah.
can't do that, mind you. I mean, like you can't do the same scene over and over again. But that's not what
No,
I don't think
exactly.
that's necessarily what you meant. It's more like you can't. You've got to have. You can't go straight from the fight scene to the dramatic reveal scene. There's got to be something connecting those two as well.
That's right. Yeah. So the road that your characters are traveling, it needs to be put in there, but you don't want it to bore the readers as well. So.
Yeah, do you have a rule of thumb for how to do kind of the summary parts like that, or how to string people through the connective tissue, or is that, like you said, it was difficult? How do you handle that?
Well, you know what, and I'm just thinking about this now because you say you write multiple stories throughout the week, and it's almost when I'm writing my epic fantasy. This is the neat thing about epic fantasy is there's so many characters in it. Like George R. R. Martin, he must have about 15,000 characters, and that's and that's the biggest knock he gets is people can't keep track of the characters. But so my chapters are always done from different points of view, so it's almost like I have different stories going on within the story. So maybe that's what helps me go from there's something going on with the Queen of the Elves, and all of a sudden her chapter's done, and I don't know where to. In my head, I don't know how to get her to her next step in the storyline, but now my next chapter isn't about her. It's now about this grumpy old goblin who's trying to deal with his lot in life, and that's why I'm writing his story, and I think that's how I bridge those gaps.
Of course, and I mean, like, an old goblin had better be grumpy. It only makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, he's grumpy. He's the high wizard of the elves, and the elves aren't too happy about that.
Oh, yeah. No, there's some tension.
Yeah.
What is this goblin even doing here? Oh, he's a wizard, huh?
he's a high wizard, yeah.
He's a very powerful wizard.
He is the head of the Wizards Guild, and the wizards, the rest of the Wizards Guild are all elves, and they are not happy about having a goblin appointed head of them, so there's a bit of animosity going on in my stories.
So you've got kind of I'm a big world building geek. It sounds like you got some classic fantasy races, at least in your story world. So, what kind of stuff do you put in this most recent series? What kind of world?
The most recent series, I've got a touch of Fae in there. They don't really come into it. The Queen of the Elves and her daughter, the Princess, who the story is actually all about. It's about the princess's rise to power over 700 years, and the Fae are in there because the elves. The Queen of the Elves and the Princess have the ability to speak to the Fae, whereas the Fae really don't live in this world. They're kind of like wood sprites and stuff like that. They're kind of part of the world. They do make a difference in what's going on in the world, but normal people can't see them. But the Queen has a special magic where she can communicate with them. So the Fae kind of touch in there. There's a goblin that comes in the story. Obviously, he's the High Wizard, so he's I've never written a goblin before, and I love writing him. Now there's a bunch of goblins in there because when there's one, there's always more. And then I have trolls in there too. They're kind of sentient, but they're not organized. Like
kind of the classic trolls, not super cerebral.
That's right. Yeah,
you might say
they're not the smartest, but they do sometimes attack in hordes. So. And then there's elves, obviously. There's man, and there's dragons. And the neat thing about the dragons is when I first envisioned my Soulforge universe in 1982, I did not want to write about dragons. I didn't want to be that guy who wrote about what everyone else writes about. I wanted to write differently. And then so I published that book in 2018. In 2019, I published book 2, Wizard of the North. And then I published Into the Madness. And halfway through Into the Madness, something happened to one of the main characters. So for 35 years, I always knew the ending of this trilogy. But when I got halfway through book 3, one of the main characters did something so bizarre that it changed the whole outcome of that. So the ending was gone. And I had to come up with a new ending for the story. Oh, what am I going to do? And then a dragon came in the story. I don't know why, but dragon came in the story. Oh, great. Now I have to explain to the reader why after 1,000 pages, no mention of a dragon. Now there is. So then I went back, and putting that dragon in the story just opened up like 30 to 35 books that I've got in my head now that I have to write.
Wow.
And so I started writing the backstory. So my timeline is like Star Wars. So my first series is The New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and The Return of the Jedi, and now I keep writing backwards. Nice. So I had to explain to the reader where the dragons went. So I wrote the next series, The Legends of the Lurker, and it explains where the dragons, why they disappeared for a while. And then when I was writing that, about halfway through book 2 in that series, I talked about the 700-year-old elf queen. I'm thinking, I want to write her story. And she, that takes place 700 years before. So now I'm writing the Highcliffe Guardians, and it's the rise of the Elf Queen.
Oh, so okay. So you started off with so you kind of got connected trilogies here. Is that kind of how you do it?
Yeah, each trilogy stands on its own. So you can read like the Legends of the Lurker. You can read. It's all about Rika's quest to save the dragons from the king, because the king doesn't like not being on the top of the food chain. He's trying to eliminate all the dragons so that he is the ultimate power in the Great Kingdom. And Rika is trained from an early age to hunt dragons. That's what you do. You hunt dragons, and at some point something happens in the story where she realizes what they're doing is wrong, and then she makes it her personal quest to save the dragons. So now she goes against the king, which means the king's going, now they're hunting her, and she starts forming an alliance with the dragons, and it's all about her trying to save the dragons from the king. So
cool.
Yeah.
Though it's interesting because it just occurred to me that a lot of the time, dragons, they're not, because in like, you go back to Arthurian legends and stuff, and dragons are just monsters that, are oppressing people. Even as late as Tolkien, the dragons are basically pure evil, But it's funny because, ever since Tolkien, gradually the dragons have they're very widespread in fantasy, and they've gradually gotten kind of more and more friendly. In some terms, like
they can be,
if not friendly, more chill. They're cooler dragons. They're not as evil, and I think that's interesting because I guess it reminds me of like I don't know, Alien versus Predator, right? That kind of thing, where it's like, the Predator was this ruthless killing machine in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but now he's like, okay, now he's the better guy. We wanted those predators to win because they're fighting something even worse. I wonder how much of that there is in there, in just the phenomenon of dragons.
Yeah, and my dragons are intelligent. I think that a lot of times you see dragons as portrayed as intelligent. My dragons, some of them dragons have a bit of a magical ability, and my dragons speak telepathically, and I know that's done quite common. So I have a lot of italics in my books, but I also have I still have the mean dragons in there as well, where they're they're not happy with mankind at all, because mankind is what it is, right? It's mankind seems to destroy everything that it touches. So the dragons are aware of that, and the dragons are aware that if they allow mankind to proliferate, then their world's going to suffer as well. So there are a sect of dragons in my stories that are not people friendly or elven friendly, but
they're still people. That's, I guess, I'm getting at. They're more and more sympathetic in some ways, because their motives make sense and stuff.
Yes.
Instead of just being greedy monsters that sit on treasure.
No, that's right. No, they're definitely they're very intelligent, and so they have their own little society.
Cool. I get. Dungeons and Dragons also did a lot with that kind of thing. With or at least built up the dragon as being like almost a Swiss Army knife type monster.
Yeah.
You can do almost anything with a dragon.
Well, that's for sure. And the series I'm writing now with the Highcliffe Guardians, that is one of the antagonists. That's his goal. So he's the Queen's brother, and he's always wanted to take the dragons and use them as instruments of war. If you have a bunch of dragons at your back, you can roll over anything. That's his belief. So in the dragons do not like humans at all. They put up with the elves. They like some of the elves. They put up with the rest. But this Duke of the elves, it's in his mind that he can run over and conquer the kingdoms of man by having a dragon army at his back. But to compensate that, mankind is short-sighted as they are, they're not stupid, and they know how to combat dragons. So even though they'll take a lot of losses, they can still bring a dragon down. And the dragons don't like that. They don't want to fight for the elves. They realize that they're going to lose a bunch of their own kind just for someone else's war.
Cool. I want to ask you a question, and this is kind of indulging my just love of monsters and dragons in this case. I'd say count as monsters here, but and no matter how sympathetic they may be, I'm still going to call them monsters because they're big, scaly things that breathe fire, I assume.
Yeah,
but how big are your dragons? I guess is the question I wanted to ask. How big? What are we talking here? The size of a car? The size of a truck?
They range in size. I don't make them like I see fantasy artwork picture them the size of a mountain, and I'm thinking, how do you deal with that? Like,
How do they
Really,
even eat at that point? What
well,
do they have
no
to
kidding,
eat to survive?
but how can you deal with a dragon the size of a mountain?
Oh, that too, yeah.
Like realistically, you're not going to be able to touch it. Nothing that you can shoot against is going to hurt it. You know, even if you did hit it with a missile, like even with a ballista bolt, you're still probably just like a sliver in its side. So my dragons are big enough to ride. Some dragons can be, I don't know, maybe the size of a house. I guess they could get that big.
Okay, so pretty big, yeah.
The bigger ones that get maybe the size of a small house, you know, with the tail and everything else on them. But
we're not talking the excessive scale. Yeah.
No, because when you think of a dragon rider, I'm thinking how, and I actually thought about this a little while ago. How do they wrap their legs around the dragon's neck if they're that big? Like, you have
That's
to
a
sit
good point.
sideways on them, or
Side saddle dragon riders.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that. So my dragons are normally small enough that you can actually spread your legs uncomfortably around the base of their neck and ride them. So they're not super huge, but they're certainly big enough to intimidate.
But they're bigger than a horse, but not as big as a house. Probably we're talking here. Then.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I have a whole bunch of different worms. So in dragons, it's just another kind of worm, WYRM. So I've got like krakens or krakens. There's always a debate.
Kraken. It's a big debate.
Yeah, and I've got ones that live in, and I call them an earthworm, but it's a WYRM, and they live in the ground, and they're huge. Like you can actually walk inside.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah,
they live underground.
Yeah. That reminds me of was it the one the Doles, or I think they were called Doles. So the one Lovecraft creature that just burrows through the earth at super speed. I think there was some kind of weird alien thing. They were just big old worms.
I've got one.
It's not pleasant at all to think about, though.
Yeah, no, I've got one in one of the books that it was planted deep in the earth as a little pupa or whatever, and it's slowly grown over the centuries and eons, and its goal is like a butterfly, where the pupa comes out, and once it comes out of the crust of the earth, it'll devour the earth. So one of the wizards is trying to keep this from happening. So it went into the earth and actually went inside this worm and tried to prevent it from moving. And it was only moving like 2 or 3 inches a year. So it's going to take many, many years before it actually.
But sooner or later, it gets to the surface.
Sooner or later, it's going to consume the world. So the wizard went down there trying to prevent that. But yeah.
Geez, I'm going to dust off an old reference here. That reminds me of this book I'd read in school. It was called The Coming Race by or Vril. I think it's actually called Vril now, but the original name was The Coming Race by Bulwer Lytton, 19th century author.
Wow.
Utopian science fiction, also but it involved this race of creatures that lived underground, and they had weapons of mass destruction. So it's like a Hollow Earth story.
Yep.
But then they were they were always at peace with each other, but they had these very powerful weapons, and eventually they just had to keep expanding. So eventually they were going to come to the surface and conquer humanity. But that was the implication at the end of the story, mind you. I mean, spoiler alert for a book that's over 100 years old.
Yeah, well, my wizards tried to deal with this, but they can't kill it, so they haven't actually quite dealt with it. It's still down there, so
okay, no spoilers there. Let's
they still know it's
there. Keep the reader
but,
in suspense.
but it's like our sun's going to blow up at some point, but and take everything out in the solar system. But you and I really don't need to worry about that. So
yeah, our brief lives aren't going to be enough to let us see that day, which is thank goodness.
So we don't think much about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so. No, it sounds like you got a pretty extensive series here. Between all, how many trilogies do you have right now in this universe?
I've got 3 trilogies now. I'm working on the 4th one. It's actually a tetralogy. It was supposed to be a trilogy, and like you mentioned before we went on air about the cover art I have in my office. I always include interior pictures in my books, and I was on a Facebook group. I do a lot of stuff through Facebook. I was on a Facebook art group, and I saw this picture that that'd be a great picture of Odeling Wise, who's the princess of the elves. That looks like her in my mind. So I wanted that picture to use as an interior. So I contacted the artist and said, hey, can I buy that as an interior picture? She said, no. She says, it's too good to be an interior picture. I want to sell it as a cover. I already had the covers for the series. So I sat on that for about 4 days. And then I'm thinking a 600-page book came into my head about that happens a little bit before book 1. And I got to have that cover. So I bought the cover. And that's where yeah, no, it's not a prequel. It actually became.
It's the new book 1.
Yeah, so it became Keeper of the Jewel, and that was the actual title. You know how the cover artist will put the titles on them. So it was her cover, and she put Keeper of Jewel. I said, "Can I use that title as well?" And she said, "Yeah." So
Oh, nice.
next thing you know, she's named my book and made the cover for it. So and that book's already out in the market.
Several birds with that stone.
No, it's perfect.
Nice.
It just so resonated with me. So it's going to be a 4-book series. So.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, I love fantasy. I'm not actually, but lately I've been reading more heroic fantasy than epic fantasy. So that's the kind of thing I like. I've been delving back into old stuff like Elric and Melnibone by.
He's one of the ones that got me.
Moorcock.
Yeah,
I haven't talked about that one recently, and there's a lot. I just like these fast-paced books that clipping out there. You know.
Yeah. Sailors on the Sea of Fate.
Oh, the Seas of Fate.
One of my favorite books. I think it's book 2 in the Melnibone series.
It is. Yeah. It's the second of the original books, of the prequel trilogy. Yeah. I read that. I just read those last year. So yeah.
Is that the first time you read it last year?
Yeah, I had not. I'd never picked them up before. They were vastly influential to a lot of stuff I grew up with, like Warhammer. Warhammer Fantasy was like hugely influenced by Elric, and because I grew up in the 90s, so
So have you read the Count Brass series yet?
No.
Oh, you got to read the Count Brass series. If you like Eric and Melnibone, you'll love the Count Brass series as well. It's by Michael Moorcock as well.
Okay, I'll have to look into it. I mean, I have a lot of Moorcock books to get through.
He's got so many good books.
Honestly, I never read a Moorcock book before I picked up what is it? The first one, the prequels, for Elric.
I'd Sail the Seas of Fate always just sticks up my mind because that's the one that made me fall in love with Moorcock. I read that first, and he's got a book before that, so I read the book before that.
I think Sailors is a lot better than the earlier book.
Yeah. No,
it is pretty excellent. I like the Dead Gods book a lot too, though. That was the next one. I still have to get through I haven't read the original Elric series yet, believe it or not. I'm still in book 1 of that series
that's the first time I've ever came across, and this was in late 70s, maybe. So, I'm dating myself here, but late 70s, I think I read that. That's the first time I came across Ascension Sword.
Yeah.
One that actually, almost is a character on its own.
Yeah, it twists in your hands. Kills what it wants.
Yeah. No, that was awesome, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, do you have anything you've been reading lately? It sounds like you write a lot. Do you have time to read?
I do read. I find it tough to read now because that's all I do is edit and write all day. So by the end of the day, as much as I want to read, I don't feel like reading anymore because that's all I've done all day. Like my eyes are all buggy. But when I do read, I read Salvatore, and then I read Terry Brooks, and then I'll read something else. I just finished the Terry Brooks Shannara series. I got the last book signed by Terry, and he mailed it to me. I didn't actually see him. Terry Brooks, the Sword of Shannara,
we live in.
Yeah, Terry Brooks, The Sword of Shannara was the book that made me fall in love with fantasy. It actually is the book that made me want to write fantasy. Before that, I was writing science fiction and Hardy Boy books because I was a kid at that time. I wanted to write my own Hardy Boy books. But it was when I read Sword of Shannara in the late 70s that really made me fall in love with the fantasy genre. And then I read Lord Fowl's Bane by Stephen R. Donaldson, which was another amazing world building. I think he's got to be the best world builder I've ever read.
Okay.
Like his world, if you can get past his sad sack hero, which a lot of people won't read it because they don't like Thomas Covenant, he's a sad sack. But if you can get past him and just the world building and Stephen R. Donaldson worlds are amazing. And then I read Sailor on the Seas of Fate by Michael Moorcock, and those 3 books I was hooked on fantasy, and I've been writing it ever since.
Awesome. Well, Richard H. Stevens, it's been really good having you on the show. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I like talking to you, and anytime you want to have me back, just let me know, and we'll talk some more Moorcock, and we'll see how far you got.
Yeah, I'm a pretty slow reader these days. Like I described earlier in this podcast, I write way too much, and I have to edit every day, so I do a ton of reading of my own stuff every day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I hear you.
But I've really fallen back into reading. But I don't have the time that I wish I had for it now. I guess that's what it is to grow up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my best time is to read is in the morning, and generally I need a quiet house to read, so it doesn't happen.
Well, Richard, where can people find your books? I have a feeling I know, but tell people where they can find them.
We just started going wide in 2021. We were on Kindle Unlimited. We're not anymore. Obviously, we're on Amazon, but you can buy them. You can find the links to all my books through my website at www.richardhstevens.com, and Stevens is spelled Stepgens. not with a V. So richard8stevens.com, and all my books are there. You just click on the link, and it's got a universal link that'll take you to wherever you live site. And you can, they're out there wide now, so you can get them on Kobo and Nook and Apple and everywhere else. So
go get them, folks.
Yes. Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Leave a review. Don't forget to leave a review.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Or at least a rating. Like, Amazon's doing a lot with ratings lately where you don't have to leave the review. And I actually appreciate that because it means you get more people who are just like, impulse, that's a good book. I'm going to give it a 5-star.
Yeah, no, I always tell people, I said, I don't care how, if you're going to leave a review, just say, I like the book. That's all you have to do, or say nothing.
That's all it takes. Fine, yeah. And it makes the author's day to see those little reviews.
Oh, for sure, yeah. That's what helps us, the independent authors, for sure.
Yep. So, yes, thanks again, Richard. It's been a lot of fun. And as for this podcast, you can find us at mentalcellularpublications.com. We got the entire list of all the back episodes, but you can also find them hosted at Libsyn. And, of course, my books are available pretty much exclusively on Amazon.com right now. I've also got my 10 serials on Kindle Vella. You can find those at timniederwriter.com/serialized-fiction. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take it easy, and I will talk to you again next week.
That tears it.